We have with us today the Honorable Justice Seamus McCaffery. Justice McCaffery, thank you for coming in and participating in this program designed to preserve the rich history of the Philadelphia Municipal Court.
It's my pleasure, Tom.
Now, I've called you Justice, but we're here focusing in on municipal court. You know, you have many accomplishments beyond your tenure on municipal court. But let's start by going back to the beginning. Why don't you tell us where you were born, tell us about your parents, your siblings.
Well, to start out, as I mentioned a minute ago, I was born in 1950 in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I'm one of 7 children. And my mother and father, Seamus and Margaret McCaffery, the whole generations of McCaffreys all coming out of the north of Ireland. And back in around maybe 1952, my father, who was Catholic, was one of the first Catholics to be hired in a big printing company. He was, again, an anomaly of sorts because there's a major amount of discrimination over there between Catholics and Protestants. But my father was a world-ranked boxer at the time. And he fought under his father's name, Joseph McCaffery. And the people in this printing company liked the fact that somebody from their community had risen so high in that particular arena. And they hired my dad as an apprentice printer. And he was doing pretty well for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden on July 12th, which is a big celebration for they call it the Orange Order, if you will, my father came into work. His workstation had British colors all over it. My father tore it down. He was attacked by some coworkers, and he was beaten into a coma with a mallet. And at that point in time, my grandfather, his father, said to him, Seamus, this is no place for you. He spent almost a full month in a coma, and his boxing career was over. So my dad, with $21 in his pocket and the name and phone number of a distant cousin in Montreal, Ireland, left Ireland, left my mother and 3 children in Belfast. He went ahead and he lived there for almost 2 years before he could afford to bring us out. Mm-hmm. So my mother left Northern Ireland on a boat, wow. Literally on a boat with 3 babies. And luckily, as my mom always says, luckily the guys on the boat were from her neighborhood. My mother was raised in the dockyards of Belfast, Northern Ireland. So these young men who were known to her helped her with us 3 children. We came to Montreal and we stayed there till 1955. And my father had to wait because he really wanted to go to America. My mother couldn't deal with the cold. And so he had a distant cousin in Philadelphia. She had married an individual during World War II. Her name was May Phillips. We called her Aunt May. So my father had to have a job. He had to have medical documentation for everybody to make sure we were all in good health. He had to have a sponsor, which was his cousin. And he had to have a place to live. And we moved into Germantown.
Wow. And
so from there on, that's where we were raised here. We had a brother born in Montreal, Canada. A brother passed away in Montreal, Canada, my brother Noel. And when we came to America, my sister Colleen, my sister Kathleen, and my baby brother, Daniel, now Judge Dan McCaffery, were all born here in Philadelphia.
Amazing.
So, we were the typical North Philadelphia family. Dad and Mom worked several jobs. Mom worked in a knitting mill. Dad worked as a caddy during the day in a local country club. And he worked at night as a printer. Matter of fact, downtown here in Progressive Printing. And we were all children who went to local parochial schools. Most of us went to Immaculate Conception in Germantown and then Cardinal Doherty High School. And from there my other siblings went to Resurrection Parish in Northeast Philly, and then St. Hubert's and Father Judge. At 18 years old, I really was not inclined to go to college. Mm-hmm. So I decided to join the United States Marine Corps. Why not? And I was during Vietnam, and I did not go to Vietnam. But I fell so madly in love with the military that I spent 21 years in the Marine Corps and Marine Corps Reserve. And then after I left the Marine Corps, I joined the United States Air Force Reserve and spent 23 years there for a total of 40 years. So I joined the Marine Corps as a private, and I retired 40 years later as a full colonel.
So you were in the Marines.
Right.
Where were you stationed?
Cherry Point, Camp Lejeune, different places around the South, mostly in the Carolinas. And then over the course of all the years, my goodness, we were everywhere. As you can imagine, I was activated during 9/11,
Okay.
sent down to Air Combat Command in Langley, Virginia. At the time, I was a lieutenant colonel. We were activated during Hurricane Katrina, a lot of the big natural disasters. I was the Air Force liaison to what we called the Department of Homeland Defense, Homeland Security now. So we worked the various hurricanes. We were the liaison with the local municipal governments, both the state and local. We provided them with all the air assets that they needed, things along those lines. While in the Marines, I was an explosives officer and also a helicopter enlisted man. So I have a wide and very interesting background when it came to 40 years in the military.
Absolutely. So between these deployments, what were you doing?
Well, I came home from the Marines active duty, and I tried to get into the electricians union. I couldn't. I didn't have a family member at the time. I tried being a printer with my father at Chilton Publications at 56 in Chestnut. Didn't like the 9 to 5. And one day I was walking right here through City Hall, and I saw a big sign that said, "Join Rizzo's team." And I looked at the sign, and there was the Municipal Services building across the street. I walked in, signed up, took all the obligatory tests, and next thing you know, I was in the police academy. And from there, I was assigned to the 39th district, literally one police district over from where I was raised.
Right.
And so I had a wonderful opportunity to work in North Philadelphia most of the time in uniform. Had a chance to meet a lot of great, great men and women, both in the community as well as in the police department. And, it exposed me to the court system. And honestly, Tom, that was the driving impetus for me to say, something, I see these judges, and a lot of times, as you and I know from our backgrounds, my first experience and our first exposure in law enforcement was to the Philadelphia Municipal Court.
Right.
Because every time you made an arrest, every time you were called to court at that level, because it was the entry-level court, preliminary hearings, things along those lines, it was always the municipal court.
Absolutely.
And that's where I got a chance to meet some incredible judges, Judge Scott and, Judge Cosgrove, Conway, just judge after judge. And they were just characters. Every one of them was a character. And, the nice thing about Judge Ron Merriweather, of all people, former Secret Service agent, Judge Merriweather and I were the dearest of friends. And, he was just a mentor to me.
So tell me about your career in the police department. Just briefly, uniform, and what about your advancement in the department?
I spent some time in the 39th District, as I indicated. Then I was selected to go undercover, where I was in the Vice Squad, Northeast Vice. I actually grew my hair. I had hair back then, down to my shoulders with a beard, and that was kind of interesting. And from there, I ended up becoming a detective. I got my gold badge. My oldest son, Sean, who's now a detective, has my same badge. And, I just spent a lot of years both in the division and then, of course, in homicide division, where I met some incredible investigators. Homicide was probably, for me in my experience, the place where I grew the most, because I was meeting people. And remember, when you're in law enforcement, just like in the court systems, when you first come in as a newbie, a rookie, if you will, you're shaking hands with, you're working with, you're talking with people that have already spent 20 and 30 years in law enforcement. So, I had a sergeant, Sergeant Higgins, who was promoted to sergeant in 1953. I was 3 years old when this man was promoted to sergeant. And they were our mentors. Right. The old World War II and Korean War cops taught us younger officers how to really be cops. And by that I mean, it's so not like it is today. As an example, the older cops would always say to us, "Seamus, the minute you put that uniform on, you're making enemies. Our job is not to make enemies. Our job is to make friends." And they taught us when we went out on the street, if you saw somebody in the neighborhood who was acting up or whatever, don't lock them up. You take them home to their mom and dad. Take them home to their parents. And I can't tell you how many friends we made, because we were all kids once. We were all acting up. We all got in trouble. But we were weaned on making friends, taking care of the community, making sure that Johnny or Joey or Mary or Sally or whomever didn't get a criminal record. Because we understood the importance, because once you got a criminal record, probably 1/3 of the jobs in this country weren't available to you.
Right.
So we learned that aspect of it. If somebody was driving home from a bar and they were a little off kilter a little bit, if you will, We didn't lock them up for DUI back then. We would park their car. We would take their keys. We would take them home. And we put the keys in the headquarters in their wifer. They would come in the next day and pick it up. And they would say, thank you very much. Why? Because we weren't interested in being where we don't need to be. We basically had the old theory of no harm, no foul. We weren't out just to lock people up. And that was the kind of learning experience I had. And then I decided, when I finally decided to go to law school, because I wanted to be a judge. I saw these men and women in their robes, and during my tenure as a cop, I thought I could be a judge.
So you decided to go to law school with your goal being
A judge.
become a judge.
I never wanted to be a lawyer.
Okay.
Never wanted to be a
Okay.
lawyer. And it was actually somewhat comical because my first day in Temple, and by the way, my experience trying to get into law school was the first year I applied, I was rejected. Okay?
At Temple.
At Temple, I was rejected. And I ran into an individual, I met through other friends, an individual, my current wife actually connected me with a gentleman by the name of Arthur Macadon from Ballard Spar. And Arthur Macadon and an African-American woman by the name of Donna Claxton Deming from Temple Law School. And Donna Claxton Deming, and I'll never ever forget her, she was the lady who gave me my break. She was the lady who got me an interview, and I appeared in front of the board up there at Temple, and they liked me, they liked what they heard, and they decided to give me a shot. And I think you know now, there's only been 2 Supreme Court justices ever to graduate from Temple Law School, James T. McDermott and Seamus Patrick McCaffery.
I didn't know that, but now you went to Temple while you were still on the police force.
Yes, I went to night school.
Because I remember
You're right.
you sitting in the hallways waiting to go in and testify in cases with
You got that
your
right,
law
yeah.
books.
That you were handling. Yeah, and that was, it was rigorous. I mean, when you think about it, those of us that went to night school, it's a 4-year program.
Right.
Most law school students today go to 3 years day school. But the night school student body was so much different because we had medical doctors, we had dentists, we had all sorts of professionals, accountants, stuff like that. They were just such a pleasant, it was a pleasant atmosphere. Our professors at night school were people like you, that brought a wealth of street experience, of law experience into the courtroom. They weren't just academicians, they were real world lawyers. And honestly, I'm happy I went to night school because it was just a great growing experience for me.
So you graduate from Temple Law School, you pass the bar. How does your legal career begin?
Well, the first time I didn't pass the bar.
Is that right?
That's right. I did not pass the bar the first time. Matter of fact, when I used to swear in a lot of the law students from the various schools, I used to say to these young men and women, how many of you here, have friends that didn't pass the bar? And a lot would raise their hands. And I used to say to all of them, I want you to go back and I want you to contact each and every one of them and tell them that the Supreme Court justice that was swearing you in today also flunked the bar. And I did that because, we were all there once.
That's right.
And it's so important to have that kind of mentorship. I'm a big fan of mentors. And I went to a law firm after I graduated. I actually wanted to be a U.S. attorney. And this is one of the funniest stories you can imagine. I applied to go into the U.S. Attorney's Office. Never heard a word back. Lo and behold, I get picked up at a big law firm, Lavin, Coleman, Finarelli, and Gray, right here in Philadelphia. And I practiced in the environmental law arena because I wanted to get some civil litigation experience. And 4.5 years later, I ended up getting elected to the municipal court. Okay.
Right. So how you're working at the law firm?
Yep.
And how does the judgeship come about?
I had a desire to, again, become a judge. That's all I wanted to do. But I found it very easy to get clients. I started bringing in a lot of clients. And the owner of the firm, George Lavin, the late George Lavin, who, believe it or not, was a former FBI agent, George Lavin said to me, Seamus, why do you want to be a judge? You're doing so well here. You're bringing all these cases. I was kind of like a Rainmaker 2.0, okay? And I showed some ability to bring clients in. And I said, George, honestly, my goal is to be a judge because I think I can really lend a lot to that particular profession. So when I was a homicide detective, we had a very, very famous homicide. It was the murder of a gentleman by the name of John McCullough. John McCullough was the head of the Roofers Union at the time. He was a Marine Silver Star recipient, and he was renowned within the building trades and the labor community here in Philadelphia. One of the big guys that was a close personal friend of John McCullough was a man named John Morris, who was the head of the Teamsters 107. Johnny Morris came to me and he said, Seamus, we are going to put our people behind you because we feel that somebody with your background, somebody that came up from the streets, is going to add a lot to the court. And I was humbled by the fact that, here are all these people. They don't know me. They know that I was able to bring to justice the individual that murdered McCullough. It was an organized crime hit, as you remember. And yet they're the ones that put all their weight behind it. And they introduced me to Congressman, not then Congressman, but Chairman Bob Brady. And so the chairman said to me, look, you need to do your time. You need to come down here to city committee. You need to meet the ward leaders. You need to represent their constituents. So lo and behold, I became one of the top lawyers at city committee at the time, and I was representing probably 60 of the 69 ward leaders. And then when two openings came, one court of common pleas and one municipal court. And Judge Brinkley and I, now Judge Brinkley, she and I were the two contenders. And she elected common pleas, and quite frankly, I was glad I elected municipal court because I was new as a lawyer. I only had just about 5 years on the 5 years practicing.
Right.
And I thought, what a perfect setup to be in municipal court where you could really learn how to be a judge. And Tom, it was the best move I've ever done, because this court, the Municipal Court of Philadelphia, is, in my opinion, the workhorse of the system. And
Absolutely.
it just afforded all of us, and you pick a name, I don't care who it is, maybe I shouldn't use the word blossomed, but we all became real judges here. And it helped me set that foundation as a jurist, because I knew what was going on. I had a feel for what was going on. Remember, as I progressed up that judicial chain, a lot of people I was working with were never judges.
Right.
They would go right from lawyer to Superior Court.
Right.
One actually went from lawyer to Supreme Court. So they didn't really have a feel for what it's like to wear the black robes. Remember, when you're on the appellate courts, you're overruling judges.
That's right.
I think it makes a world of difference to have sat in that particular seat, to understand what he or she is going through, and understand objections and things along those lines, and the law, and how you don't just arbitrarily overrule a judge. You have to put yourself in that judge's position on the trial bench. So municipal court afforded me an incredible amount of exposure, but more importantly, from my perspective, Tom, municipal court it was so flexible. It allowed us to create domestic violence courts, mental health courts, veterans courts. The things that we did, no one heard of. Common pleas judges were looking at us going, what on earth are you guys doing there? And we showed them that we are the people's court. Because we're literally the first line in the judicial system. So when we started to see an awful lot of veterans coming into our courtroom, a lot of Vietnam guys. Now, Afghanistan and Iraq at the time wasn't really something that it is today. But we noticed post-traumatic stress disorder, and we noticed a lot of TBI, traumatic brain injury. And so what happened was these veterans were coming home. They were self-medicating, alcohol, drugs, domestic violence issues were coming up. They were homeless. They needed the proper job training. So lo and behold, I decided, start bringing these vets into our courtroom. We reached out to the VA. The Veterans Administration then sent their people in. And next thing you know, after we started getting a few meetings, matter of fact, some meetings right in this room, they were very enthusiastic about designating a specific judge, a veteran, myself, to handle these types of cases. So that just blossomed. And later on in life, when I ended up on the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, we had 19 veterans courts across Pennsylvania because of what we started here in the municipal court. Pennsylvania's core veterans programs started right here in municipal court and expanded with the help of our court and our leadership. And now we had 19 courts across Pennsylvania. We're the second, I believe, largest state in the country. Again, starting out in municipal court.
So you have your accomplishment on the municipal court, establishing the first veterans court. What other accomplishments did you have during your tenure on the municipal court?
Oh, well, and that's where I was going. We're talking about domestic violence courts. We're talking about mental health courts. I remember the woman who was the, she ran the municipal services building. She was a doctor. I I'm sorry I can't remember her name right now, but she was a psychiatrist. And she and I met together and we decided this is what Philadelphia needs, because we can't keep putting people in jail. You know, to us, jail is the last resort. When you put people in jail, you're a failure in the sense that you were unable to find something to do with them to really help them with their lives. And so my father passed away of Alzheimer's. I understand and appreciate the need, okay, for mental health courts, but also mental health treatment. We had more people in jail that belonged in hospitals. You know, there's a lot of great books out dealing with the mental health, you know, problem in our country, but we had to take some steps to get as many people out of jail, get them the treatment that they needed. And eventually, again, that all blossomed into programs that we were able to get people the type of treatment that they need, get them out of the jail cells. I mean, can you imagine living in your mind, you're sick, you have this mental illness, and then we put you in a 12 by 12 cell? That's torture. So we worked hard to get that up and running. And again, you know, we called it Love Court, Domestic Violence Court, where we worked harder to keep families together, not put people in jail. You know, one of the things I loved about municipal court is our ability to do diversion programs. I don't know if you recall, but I started night court. Our night court program, where we would go into the community at night, and we were finding so many people were afraid to come out of their houses at night. Why? Because there were young men and women out there drinking, starting problems. You know, the quality of life down in the neighborhoods was horrible. And next thing you know, I got a phone call to come down to South Philadelphia, 11th and Wharton, very first night court. I'd ride down on my Harley, had my robes and my bags. And we went down there, the police were there, and this was after a full day on the bench here. And we started the nuisance night court program. Well, lo and behold, it made all the papers. We were getting calls from politicians throughout Philadelphia, and we ended up becoming the biggest nuisance night court around. We actually got federal funding for it. So that kind of flexibility. And again, the beauty of that was the neighborhood kids. We weren't putting them in jail. We weren't giving them criminal records. We were giving them community service. Back in the day, remember, graffiti was an epidemic in our city. We were taking them and putting them 50 hours, 75 hours, 100 hours of community service in the rec centers. Department of Rec loved us. We were cleaning up the rec centers, cleaning up around the areas. We actually tried to get, you know, and there was some problems with it because the unions were a little bit against it, but we tried to get community service cleaning up like Roosevelt Boulevard, cleaning up the streets, because we felt that why give these people jail time? Give them something to give back to the community. And oh, by the way, we would even waive their fees where we could. No, you know, the fact that somebody wasn't capable or willing, and not willing, but capable of paying fines and costs, whatever fees we could waive, we waived. Because to us, you know, and we actually were proponents of giving people that were incarcerated X amount of days off for all the community service they do. So this was the beauty of municipal court. So then, of course, you know, everybody knew about, you know, our nuisance night court, and then came the infamous, and you're laughing because you know where I'm going. 1998, I believe it was, there was the infamous flare gun debacle in the Philadelphia Eagles football game. It was a nationally televised game. It was the Philadelphia Eagles and I forget the team right now, but the bottom line was there was somewhere in the vicinity of 60 fistfights in the stands. It was so bad that the players on the field were actually looking up at the stands at the fights. I wasn't aware of it. I wasn't there at the time. And San Francisco 49ers, that's what it was. Next day, I'll never forget it. Currently, our mayor, Jim Kenney, then city councilman Jim Kenney, called on the phone and he said, Judge, Jeff Lurie and Joe Banner would like to meet you. And honestly, I was a Flyers guy. And I'm thinking, Jeff Banner, Joe Banner, Jeff. And it struck me, oh, the Eagles. So I said, sure. So we drove down and we meet them. And they said, Judge, we would like you to do something a little radical. We'd like you to open up a courtroom here in Veterans Stadium. And I looked at him, and at first I thought, you got to be kidding me. And I said, look, I'm a judge. There's no courtroom here. We'll build you a courtroom. And I said, well, I'll do it. I'll do it on my own. But we have certain things that we need to get taken care of. One, I needed to get permission of the court.
Right.
Okay? Two, we needed to get the public defenders involved. And people say, why? I said, because we want to ensure that nobody thinks that
Right.
we are railroading drunks. To this day, we would still run into people saying, oh, you're the judge at Vet Stadium, at the Eagles Court that used to lock up the drunks. No, we didn't lock up drunks. We all know that you can't try a drunk. But what we did was we went down there and we had the kind of positive impact that worked. I came back to municipal court, and Judge Alan Silberstein was the president judge. And again, this is the kind of atmosphere that I had the honor and privilege of working with, where I could walk into the president judge's chambers and say, Alan, this is a problem for this city. We're getting a black eye, around the country. Everybody's laughing at Philadelphia. Our fans, our citizens, we're just getting pummeled in the media. I'm being asked to come down there and open up a court. And at first, many, many judges would just automatically say no, not Judge Silberstein. Alan Silberstein was such a progressive guy in the sense that he was the one that was backing us for the mental health courts. He was backing us for all the other courts. The other president judge, Lou Presenza, became a big, big guy in the drug treatment courts.
Right.
Lou, God bless him, went on and did some great stuff. The stuff that we were doing at that time took municipal court, I think, away from being just a low-level court to a creative, a progressive, a front runner in jurisprudence and creative, justice. And so Alan Silberstein said, Seamus, you can do it, but you can't leave your own courtroom. And I said, Judge, I'll handle my cases all day long, and thank God I have a great wife. And she said, go out at night and do what you need to do. And so we ended up with Eagles Court. I ended up on Dateline, Good Morning America, MSNBC, 60 Minutes, Inside a Petition, Cold Pizza. Time Warner flew me and my wife out to Hollywood, offered me a TV piece, a Judge Judy kind of show.
Wow.
It really, the notoriety was just incredible. And it actually propelled me to the higher courts, because then everywhere I went around Pennsylvania, I was always known as the, Veterans Court judge. To this day, I run into people and they'll go, they don't even have a clue that I was on the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. All they remember is, you were the Eagles Court judge. So that was what we, the kind of court that I was involved in and really thrilled to be a part of.
So how long were you on municipal court?
About 10 years.
And
I was the administrative judge. I got on in 1993, sworn in 2004. I would say about 7 years later, 8 years later, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania appointed me as the administrative judge of the court. And then when there was 2 openings, I think, or maybe 3 openings on the Superior Court of Pennsylvania, I elected to take advantage of that, and I ended up running and winning.
You were on Superior Court for how long?
4 years.
And then
I was, after 4 years as mid-level appellate court judge, I'm the first municipal court ever judge to go from municipal court to Superior Court. There was a municipal court judge who went from municipal court to Commonwealth Court, Judge Jim Collins.
Right.
So I ended up going to Superior Court. And then after that, 4 years later, I ran statewide and won that election and ended up the first municipal court judge ever to go to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania.
It's an amazing career.
Yeah. Oh, only in America.
Justice Caffery, we thank you so much
My
for
pleasure,
coming
Tom.
in and sharing with us that wonderful story.
My pleasure.
You have so much to be proud of.
Thank you for having me.